That'll help me link everything up later. So we actually have our first guest in Foreign Gems, Nene. Welcome. Thank you for being part of the podcast.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, man. I'm glad to have you here. I'm glad to talk about, everything to do with, what you're involved in. We'll get into that. I don't want to spoil it for the guests, but yeah, Nene is involved deeply in the tech world, and so are Ola and I. So we're excited to have this conversation and chat with you a little bit more.
So I guess for the introduction for today, I'm Ola King, one of the hosts.
Yeah, I'm Mac, another one of the hosts.
Yeah, I'm Nene. I'm Nene, the guest.
The guest of honor. The guest of honor, our first guest as well.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited to have a guest to chat a little bit outside. Like, just for context, the first few episodes we talked about how we got here. So we did that in 2 different episodes. One episode was a bit more about the career stuff. So how do we fall into this line of work in tech? Usually it's like a bit of a different career path. You don't really leave Africa knowing I'm gonna go get it in tech. Usually a few things happen along the way. So we told that story. And then also how we got to Canada, because that can also be a pretty unique story. So I would love to hear a little bit more about your story as well. If you want to tell us, how you ended up in Vancouver with us as well, and also how you ended up in tech with us as well. It'd be really interesting to hear that.
Okay. I'll try and keep it short because I'm sure we have other things to talk about.
Yeah.
So I'm from Ghana, born and raised. I went to schools in Ghana, but I went to sort of international school. So I did my O-levels for my first bit of my high school, and then I did IB for my final 2 years.
I did IB as well.
Oh, look at that. Yeah. So when I finished, I actually really wanted to, my eyes were just set on the States. And my school was very, academic focused. I'll give you stats. So my graduating class were about 70 people.
Yeah.
About 7 went to Cornell, 2 went to Harvard,
Wow.
3 went to UPenn. These guys were really, it's about the schools. When you finish that school. And it was an interesting kind of, I call it experiment. So it's a combination of half Ghanaian there, and then the other half is people who were from sort of orphanages that were owned by the school, and they brought the brightest minds from there. And it's it's supposed to be kind of a mix of Ghanaians that came from a bit of privileged background, but you were still smart, right? And then that people who were also from less privileged backgrounds, but were also smart. Kind of that unification and union would help minimize the inequality of it all. And I actually saw it work, right? Because most people were there. It's not I have a bit of I'm privileged. It's more we are all focused on academics, right? And so from that part, I really wanted to go to say Cornell. I got waitlisted, and it kind of broke my heart. I was really Ivy League or bust. Yeah. And I applied to 9 schools, 8 in the States, 1 in Canada. And the only reason I applied to UBC was they came and gave a presentation and they were like, oh, there'll be a scholarship. I'm like, all right, I'm going to apply. Yeah. I threw in a scholarship, and then, I threw in an application and I applied for a scholarship. And I was just I remember writing the essay for that scholarship the day it was due. The DHL guy was literally coming to catch it. And I was just on the computer just writing up my thoughts on something, and then I finish, I hit print, go and give it to our academic advisor, and then they send it off. And then I didn't get into the big IVs, but I got into some good schools, Brandeis, these other ones, but they weren't really offering the money like that. It was still some scholarship, but you'd have to put up a lot. And I was and then UBC pops up and poof, full ride. I'm like, okay, wow. I'll get a full ride. And then they were gonna pay you to go to school. So they paid all university plus living expenses. I'm like, wow, why would I do that? Right?
What were your grades in high school?
IB, I got a 38.
Ooh, and that's pretty good, man.
Yeah, my school, those guys I was talking about, they're the 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah. For example, the smartest person I've ever known went to that school. He was in my year. Yeah. And he's doing his Harvard PhD in math at 26. So he's like,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, so that's
Yeah.
how it was kind of formulated. But the grades were good.
Yeah.
And UBC, I think UBC's average like 32 for IB.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like on the
That's,
higher
that's
end.
yeah.
Yeah,
For context as well, like 42 is the highest you can get, and then there's 3 more bonus points that you get through some like extended essay and things like that. So total you can get 45. 38 is a really, really good score. You can pretty much get into whatever school, except maybe the Ivy Leagues, apparently.
Man, SATs weren't too great, but like, I mean, the wait list was kind of counts for something, like at least in my mind, I'm just like, maybe I was close, and they took 7 people from the school anyway, so they need some diversity. So that was how I ended up in Canada. And I think I honestly wanted to move. Like when I was like, okay, I'll get there, go and, and then bounce. But my dad works in shipping. So he's been around a bit. Like he worked for a shipping company, and he was like, Vancouver's a beautiful city, you love it. And I'm just like, And I come and I'm like, okay, well, BC's just a beautiful place, so why not stay, right? And over time, it kind of grew on me, and I was like, okay, well, I don't know, let me make the most of my opportunities. And yeah, it's been a good, like we'll continue there, but I'm imagining maybe there's some questions. So
you've been here how long now?
I'll say like 10, but I moved to Alberta in between. So I'll kind of explain that part in there. I moved to Edmonton for 2 months, Calgary for a year to the day, and then I came back.
Oh wow.
Okay.
I'll give a bit of that story in there, but So
Mark, did you want to ask him
So when you first got to UBC, what did you have in mind you wanted to study, and what were you thinking would be your path going forward?
Yeah, so when I got here, I already knew what it was. So I took economics, maths, that's for high school. And then chemistry, literature. But I knew economics was always what I wanted to do. So growing up, my dad was kind of trying to groom me to become a president. Like, you would just like become president of Ghana, So I always loved it as a concept. But it was economics and math I really liked. So I knew I needed to do a kind of a BSc, right? Like I was like, okay, B is good for theory. But so when I came, I did a economics major and focused on like the concentration was math and applied statistics. Gotcha. So it really just helped with building out models, understanding really how does the economy work if you want to just keep it broader. But I think it's also understanding scarcity, right? Because that's really what economics is teaching you.
Right.
Why do we act the way we are? Why are we rational or irrational?
Game theory.
Yeah, game theory, 100%. So I did that. In my mind, I thought I was just going to continue and go work for become an economist fully, right? Try and work in a central bank. Will it be in Ghana? Will it be here? I wasn't sure. But banking naturally was also another path. And kind of naturally gravitated towards that when I was in my final year.
So just so that everybody knows, Nene works in tech now, and it's more specifically to do with AI. So this is a bit of a departure from the original plan. So I'm going to ask my favorite question, which is, how did you make that transition? I always find these parts are really, really interesting.
Before we get to that, what's your role now?
Okay, so I'm an AI product manager at AI research lab for a bank.
Let's go. So that's the connection.
So I'm still attached to it, but it's kind of like on the techie side of things.
Okay, so
and so my question: how did you marry those two things? Now that I know that Borealis, is it?
Yeah, Borealis
is related to the finance world. That makes a little bit more sense. But how did you know that I want to work more so in the forefront, on the more cutting edge stuff, versus maybe apply the more traditional economics that you had learned?
Yeah, so it's a good. I think it ties really well to like how I ended the last. So final years of school. I started realizing, look, Canadian work experience is necessary. So earlier years, I was doing working on campus, just, working with the international recruitment offices and stuff, doing some retail jobs for the summers. And then my final year, I'm like, nah, let me get some experience that will put me in a bit of a different space. So luckily, I had few courses to finish my degree, because I got some credits from IB. So I took this options and futures trading course, and the prof was amazing. In fact, it was like that's what made me think, okay, I want to go into corporate banking. Like that was my track. That's where I was really trying to go. So the prof was like prof and I had a really good relationship. We actually still talk till today. And she was like, "Oh, I know you have like some interest there, right?" At the time, I started working for TD as a kind of customer service, and then eventually moved into FSR, financial service rep. Position. I was like, nah, this is really. Like, I understand what a line of credit, what a credit card is in general, you know, at least because back home, we don't have these products. At the time, we didn't really have these products, credit cards and understanding of lending, right? So I understood basic personal lending, but I knew that wasn't where I wanted to go. So the prof was like, oh, there's this company that is, there's this bank that is looking for an associate, and they want to put you in like a rotational program, and then eventually you would become like go into commercial banking or whatever. I think it's a better step for you. Right. So my final year, I'm literally going to write my final exams to graduate. I'm still working for this in this FSR role, and my boss is telling me it will take you 5 years to become like a financial advisor. I'm like 5 years to do it, you know, and that's 5 years from I graduated in 2017. So I go write this exam, and the next day I go to give the interview, and my boss, like I really catch on with the guy, and he's like, we're talking about stocks and stuff, and he's like, if you pass that exam, you have the job. Like you have the job, so you start next week, essentially. I was like, whoa, this is crazy. So obviously I passed the exam, and then we started like next week. So right after week after my graduation, I was starting in there doing this kind of, at the time it was like a credit analyst position. Then 2 months in, they were like, okay, the trainee program is starting, so move into it. So you rotate around the bank. You go like treasury, commercial. So you really understand how banking works. So like if Silicon Valley Bank happens, you understand, oh, okay, this is what made it. But I think it really allowed me to get a sense of, okay, these are different career paths I can take. And then after that program for a year, I moved into commercial banking fully. And it was more around like industrial and heavy equipment, like in oil and gas really. So that's why I moved to Alberta.
Oh, okay.
So then I moved to the head office for this. This was like a company called Canadian Western Bank. So moved there, started doing those finance. It was really cool at the time. You know, you finish work, you're wearing a suit, you feel like you guys are doing the banking.
Doing the thing.
You know, the banking image. But whilst I was in school, we did some sort of ML in one of our economics courses. So we did a bit where it was like kind of introduction to machine learning. And in your mind, you're looking at it like, okay, well, what could this be? Like, how could this be applied? So when I got into the role itself, commercial banking, it started becoming like, well, what we're doing is we're trying to identify if people would default or not, right? Businesses would. And I'm like, man, this thing I'm doing is really not, you know, it's really not, it's not rocket science. And human beings shouldn't be doing it. Models should. Right? So that's when I started realizing, I got a dip from this role. So 2 years in, I was like, it's time for me to find something else. And then I started looking for a fintech startup, moved into the fintech startup. It wasn't easy. I'm kind of summarizing this, but like to go from a commercial banking analyst to go into a fintech, I didn't even know product management existed at the time. You know? So I'll squeeze it in the summary. I went online, looked for country companies in Calgary. None of them were really doing fintech at the time. I looked in Vancouver. I saw this startup that was using small business lending. Like they were using AI for small business lending. So I went and looked at the product. I messaged the CEO. I'm like, I love your product, but this is what I'll change about it. The next day, he sent the recruiter is reaching out to me that, I got your name from the CEO.
Oh, wow.
That's a smart way to go about it,
So
man.
you reached out to the CEO?
Yeah, so I have the message on my phone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And from there, 6 interviews. Like these guys were not sure who I would be. He was like, well, there's the product manager role. I'm like, product manager, what's that? You know, I didn't know. So I started looking at it. The one is asking me in the interviews, like the first my manager, you know, she's asking me, do you know what a backlog is? Do you know what a roadmap is? I'm like, no, I don't know this, you know? But I'm like, well, what I can promise you is I'm going to figure that out. And honestly, like, they were trying to solve like banking issues, but none of them were bankers. Do you get me? So the subject matter expertise was what I was bringing to the table.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You get me?
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, so I came in, worked there for a little bit, a year, and then COVID hit and it was a bit of a tough time. There were some layoffs happening. It wasn't really looking like bright. So started looking, I found this Borealis role.
Yeah.
First I like Borealis AI. And the company I was working for was called Judy AI at the time. And I was like, it's not looking, great. Is there another finance related AI startup? I was not really sure.
Yeah.
But I spoke with them and then they told me, it's RBC's AI research lab. So RBC created this sort of independent subsidiary. We're still RBC employees, but we don't operate as like our emails are even at Borealis AI.
Gotcha.
You get me? So it's like giving the spin-off to allow for innovation and like go into the bank and apply AI to different things, capital markets, lending, sort of digital, customer service, all of that.
Be mad scientist.
Be mad
and
scientist.
fintech.
Yeah.
I
So
love
that's the journey, and like now I've been there for almost 3 years now, and I mean it's been great. It's like I went from the traditional banking and then went into the startup world, like Fintech, AI, product management. That was my foray into product management. Now I do it for the product management at the AI research lab for a bank. So it's like full circle.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
The biggest takeaway I took from what you said was it's a similarity between my own journey into tech. Like I reached out to a CEO of another company as well.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I initially started my own company, which I talked about before in another episode. But how I got into like working for other people was I reached out to the CEO and just said, I can do whatever. Just tell me and I'll figure it out.
Wow.
It's funny when you said that. And that was one. And number two, how I transitioned from the customer world into products that I'm in right now was through the subject matter expertise. I became an expert at SEO and I used that to transition to product. And you did that with Fintech to product. So that's something that I was at the conference we met, the product camp. There's a guy that is trying to transition from engineer into product manager. And that was the advice I gave him as well. I was like, always try to find what you are the best at that no one else is, and use that
as a leverage.
Use that as a leverage. Like in marketing, they call that like a beachhead. Use that as where you start, and then
you move into
100%.
I think whenever I'm talking to anyone who wants to move into product, right, I was like, what industry are you in? So if you're in media, if you're in, say, insurance, I'm like, okay, find insurtech companies. It's product management, what's good. So you go, insurance, I go and find a product management role for an insurtech because I can tell them, these are all the problems that I see in here. And those are what they want. They want and I think even for startups too, or for companies, most of them don't give enough weight to subject matter expertise, right? Because somebody who's been in there, for example, if you look at any of the big banks, the reason why they don't go through some of these things is they've learned lessons over time. So they don't go for like extreme ends of the spectrum. Like they don't stay on the edges of the distribution. They stay like within a range because they know, okay, if it's predictable, it's kind of not great, but like it's also like we know this is where we stay within. This is the variance. If you are starting a company, you're able to tap into all those lessons from the subject matter experts and then add a bit of speed and risk in there. You really push ahead. I just think sometimes, and this is my issue with tech a bit, is that we have a bit of overconfidence in that, like, the summary of you can go and read a quick summary of something and that you understand it. You know what I mean? I read on SEO, so now I can come and talk to online and say, isn't it just this? No, man, no, it's not. And you learn it after you go through it. Then you get hit. Then you start to become a bit, I gotta be a bit more cautious. And then you respect it. It's like, I think they call it the
curve, right?
The curve,
the knowledge curve.
Knowledge curve, literally. Unconscious competence to conscious competence.
Exactly. And you go through, like, for those who don't know the curve, it starts off with you shooting up, and on the y-axis, it's like confidence in your knowledge, and on the x-axis, it's the time that you've been involved in it, or like the experience that you have with it. And really early on, you shoot right up. It's like you're saying, you read that one blog post, you're like, oh, this is simple. I understand this. I can talk about this. And you reach that peak of confidence. But then if you spend a little bit more time on that subject, you're going to dip really low and understand that this is a much deeper subject.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think startups in general are usually in that first bit when they first start. They shoot right up and they think they know, what the product needs to be, what the market is. And then as time goes on and they try to reach that next person, they realize we don't know that much of it.
Exactly.
Which is where an opportunity to switch into the role can come from. It's like, we need somebody who understands this deeply to come help us out. And both of you have leveraged that so far in order to get to where you are. So that's really good advice for anybody trying to get into that.
Yeah, and for most people, you might not be able to know what the companies don't know. So don't be afraid to just reach out. Even if it seems obvious to you, just go for it. Worst case scenario, you get no response.
I know,
or they
right?
tell you we already know. And sometimes they tell you we already know. And then like 2 months later, they reach back out and say, oh, wait.
Yeah.
Hey, Ola, you were talking about this a long time ago. That's how I got my SEO consulting stuff. I used to just reach out to companies. I'm like, hey, I noticed you could be ranking for these keywords. Just a heads up. Sometimes people won't respond. And then a year later, I just get a message like, oh, Ola, are you free for like a quick call? So shoot your shot, man.
Shoot your shot. And I think I feel like also I'll say this the last thing for like people of our background. There's a bit of this, it's like there's this inclination to be, I think it's like misunderstood humility, right? And it's like the humility comes off in people not becoming risk averse, which is weird because it's like you think, oh, I shouldn't apply for that. They say they want blah 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 blah, or and the truth is like there's no downside to you putting out there's no downside. What is the worst that could happen? You just stay at the same spot you're in right now. So honestly, like me, I've become a bit like I'm so happy with uncertainty, right? Obviously, like there's things that you don't necessarily, like you always want to kind of make sure you're risk managing. But the truth is, I think sometimes asking for things and putting yourself out there, honestly, you'll be shocked at the kind of opportunities and doors that you'll open. Also kind of working for roles because trust me, I think the transition to tech, the reason why this is as tough as it is rigorous. Like, I mean, the interview process is not that simple. Like in my experience, it's like 4 hours, 5-6 hours. Like you're going through multiple rounds.
Meeting multiple people.
It weeds out that, like, are you able to kind of take that, So I would say, like, when you go into and you think, oh, I want to be, making tech money, or it sounds great, but like you will work, right? And I think that's another part that people need to be okay with. Like, just know that it's tough, But for example, when I was prepping for my Borealis interview, dude, I literally spent at least 24 physical hours studying for that thing. I read people's research papers, profs there. So to the point where I'm at the end when they're asking you, oh, what questions do you have for us? Normally you ask about the company, culture, all of that. I was asking them, you said this in your research paper. Do you still believe that? The guy was like, whoa, what do you mean?
This is wild. I did the same for SEO.
Really?
My first day, I told my manager who hired me, because I didn't know much SEO when I started. He asked me, how are you feeling about the whole thing? I was like, dude, to be honest, this is like calculus. And I was like, I studied computer science, and this is like my first day in school ever, and you're telling me to study calculus. None of this makes sense to me. But then, I became obsessed with it. Like for 2 months, I was dedicated to learning it. And then now it's like obvious to me, but it wasn't like that. It wasn't. And then when you tell people your path, it comes off like, oh, you're just lucky, it's easy. Everything came out easy.
God.
It takes a lot of work to make things look easy.
Exactly right.
You're not paying me because, like they will come and say, oh, look at how simple that back. No, I'm able to create it quickly because I've done it. Like I understand what's his core here. But, I think sometimes, like I said, people just need to take the time to put in the work and earn your hours. Like, earn your stripes, because I think sometimes we all just want to go 0 to 1 like that. But when you go through that curve, you'll start realizing that a lot of things that are amazing, they took time, right? And so that's the little like motivational speech I'll give to the listeners.
I wanna switch gears just for a second because you mentioned something that I've been meaning to ask about. I was actually in some of the questions Ola sent earlier as well. I was like, I think we should talk about this. And you mentioned it a little bit, which is the situation at SVB. And now we have a resident expert in the banking world to talk a little bit about this. For those who are curious, like, what would you say, like in bullet point format? What do you think happened there?
Yeah, so I think I wrote a little Twitter thread on this, right? And I think
Wait, what's your Twitter stuff for people
my
who want
Twitter.
to search for
Oh
it?
God, I literally changed my name, like my @ but it's Nene, right? That's Nene, and my actual @ is at Nene Azu. So Nene.
Okay.
So
You're
it's
getting a follow.
Nene Azu.
Nemazu.
Yeah. Before it used to be King Azu with the V, but like I changed it. I was like, let me create some separation between my Instagram and my Twitter. I don't want people to follow both. Yeah, but
You've been doing too much AI stuff. It's
no,
like, you don't want.
I'm just like,
pattern
I don't want
recognition.
to start doing some user representation here. Like,
Yeah.
what is? Yeah, no. But I'll say in a nutshell, what happened was, it's an asset liability mismatch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so typically when banks hold your deposits or whatnot, they typically put into either short or long dated bonds, right? And you're supposed to kind of time it and not put a lot of it into like one asset class. So you want to make sure that, say I'm buying bonds that are, and this will happen with SVB, they bought 10-year bonds at a really low rate, right? And if you look at the deposits, when we put money in the bank, people think you're just storing your money there.
Yeah.
You're really
Like
lending your money to the bank,
It's
right?
in a safe somewhere. It's not.
No.
It's not in a safe.
And when you read financial statements, you'll see that banking financial statements are different from every other company's, because banks hold your cash as liabilities, and you know what I mean. So in there, you will notice they have to pay some sort of interest on the liabilities, right? And unfortunately, because SVB is locked in a large percentage of their liabilities in at, which is to them assets, in at what do you call it, like a really low rate, right? They're having to pay, rates shifted really quickly, right? Like the central bank Fed was increasing rates like nobody's business. So you have this thing where now you have, say like $10 billion, let's just call it that, at 1.35%. And you've got like that same amount in at, what do you call it, 4% that you're paying on them. So it leads to two things happening. Now you have this mismatch, so you're already taking a loss on the spread between them, but you also need to kind of have like a liquidity, like a percentage that has liquidity. So in case you came to the bank and you say, I want my money, which so they, over time, the bank kind of knows maybe 15% of their money is going to be rotated, available cash, basically. They call it short-term liquidity. So these guys had that difference, and then Peter Thiel, the legend.
0 to 1.
Yeah, 0 to 1.
Writer.
Yeah, he was just like, okay, like he noticed what was going on and just like, okay, he rang the alarm bells. And then all in podcast guys also were kind of talking to, and so it led to, it's a crazy, and it led to like this run on the bank. So essentially what happened was you had a spread that was too like negative, so they were already losing money.
Yeah.
In truth, if they held it to maturity, they would have been fine without having to pull out money. But if you've got 50-60% of people instantly asking for money,
Now
you're in a crunch.
Money you don't have.
So then money you don't have, and you're already owing like a negative yield on top of that. So I think just in a simplified version, they borrowed, they had our funds. They were paying us more than they were earning on the funds they had, so they couldn't really maintain that. But then also people started asking for their money right away, and for a bank, every bank needs to run on deposits. Like one of the core things they need. So that led to a point where the FDIC said, nah, and in Canada, just for everybody to know, there's a CDIC, so there's a deposit insurance company, and I think the Canadian one is $100K if I'm not. So problem is when you have a bank fail, like what happened, typically deposit accounts, depending on what it is up to $100K. and that's in Canada. In the US, it's $250. But I'll say for those who want to kind of avoid this, if you have that much money, make sure you put money into like separate things. So you can put a bunch of money into different accounts, but also, and if say you had 100K in CIBC and 100K in TD, those are separate accounts.
So 100,000 here, 100,000 there.
Yep. And then you can also kind of create like trust accounts. So if you go into the trust side, you can put that money in there. So every account is insured up to 100K.
Yeah.
And then if say the three of us were to open an account, that's also insured on 100K. And then if the two of you also open, it's also insured at 100.
Yeah.
So it's not per person,
So
it's
different
per like
entity.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, this is typical for banks to do, is to use some of those deposits, try and get a return on it. That's how they make their money. That's how they're able to, lend money out to other people and things like that. Where do you think it went wrong with this particular implementation of that very typical banking business strategy?
So with the bigger banks, the beauty of them, or the amazing thing for them, is some of them are considered domestically important banks, and then some of them are considered globally, systemically important banks. Yeah. And the domestic ones, like in Canada, will be the big five: CIBC, TD, BMO, RBC, and Scotiabank.
Scotia, yeah.
So if they failed, they're so important to the economy because of they have their hands in so many things that the government will bail them out. So that's on the domestic level. Yeah. RBC and TD are on the global level because they have their hands in multiple other countries as well, and they facilitate like a lot of those flows of cash and trade and stuff like that. So they would be bailed by like even a higher power. World Bank step in. They can't fail.
Yeah.
So if you were following Bill Ackman, you will hear him say, okay, these guys, like everybody's going to pull their money out of like these companies or these banks that are not domestically or globally important banks and move it to the JP Morgans and the RBCs of the world.
Yeah.
So the problem was when you were managing your balance sheet, and there were like two graphs that I had on my Twitter post that showed what was going on. SVB was a full outlier in terms of how they were managing the distribution of their portfolio. No bank does that. Like has that kind of split. And also nobody holds those long-term, short, like low yielding bonds. Like no one's gonna hold that. So I think this is another part of it. People say is that like SVB was really moving on. I don't know, like it's like a California-esque vibe. Like they paid very, very insane like salary. So the SVB, as opposed to like the banking average, was paying about $250K, and banks don't typically pay that much. So I think it was just a bit of a, they
were getting into the Silicon Valley
the
vibes.
Silicon Valley vibes, like just like moving like we support cutting edge work, and so they started becoming a bit complacent. And I also think it's also that expertise. Like if you have a traditional banking board, a lot of these things will not be like omitted. Like they're just, so I think that's where it is. It's like, comes back to having prudent risk management systems built in that allow for you not to, it might seem simple and, who expects a bank to fail in this 2023? But SVB was also lobbying against those Dodd-Frank rules that were put in 2008.
Wow.
Like they were just, we don't want to have these liquidity requirements.
Freedom.
They wanted just to be able to hold. And then here we are with a case in where like now they've basically failed. And so I think it just comes back to the point where I'm saying that the incumbents have some sort of deep knowledge, and they've done things a certain way, and we sometimes, from a naive perspective, we look at it and we're like, why would they have to hold these deposits? Why wouldn't they be a little bit more risky? But it's because of things like this, right? And it's stability in terms of financial systems. You look more for stability as opposed to like outsized gains, right? That's why like the Fed is always looking at inflation, and it's because they don't want it to be like for things to be just unstable. Keep it at that 1-2%, and then the economy is healthy. So same thing with banking. Yeah.
So SVB got eye of their own supply.
Literally.
They really did. They really did.
They did.
They're also doing some other kind of like financial trickery almost, but they were also giving out venture debt with venture deposits. So like when you raise money, they were putting all that deposit in SVB, and if a startup needed to borrow money, they could borrow money from SVB.
Look at that. I mean,
and that is dangerous.
Oh my God.
That is a dangerous kind of feedback loop.
Yeah.
Especially venture, because like if you've been in tech, you know it's all risky. Like with startups especially, you never know if you're gonna get return in that. So not only are you risking that, you've also tied up your money in these like long-term investments.
Yeah.
It's gonna create a cash problem, and then all it takes is somebody to notice and tell everybody, and everybody's just in the group chat like, take your money out now, and then your bank is over a weekend.
And what sucks is, like, think about it this way: so banks fail all the time, municipal banks, whatever, and they don't get bailed out. You get me? And the truth was, when I listened to a lot of people, it's like we should have let it fail. For it kind of resets the system. So if you look at like crypto, you see like FTX happened, but FTX was but BlockFi, Celsius, like there were a couple of them that also sort of failed, and nobody bailed them out. You get me? And here, I mean, they didn't necessarily get bailed out. The government guaranteed their deposits, but people are saying they shouldn't have intervened because it kind of makes it look like, well, if anybody necessarily fails, the government will also kind of step in, and you know. And so there is a bit of like this reset that needs to happen. Like nobody wants to see a company go to zero.
Right.
But if it's being run wrongly, like then in principle it should be allowed to. The market is efficient, right? It rewards people that are doing great, and it doesn't for those that aren't. And for banks too, right? So we'll just have stronger, more risk, like banks that have strong risk management existing, and then the ones that don't. But it's just, consumer safety too. They don't want people
that's
to be
the thing.
losing.
The people who deposited the money, they're not really at fault in the situation, right?
But see, so if I also had my money in BlockFi and Celsius, what about me?
That's
right?
true.
And that's the point. Like
That's true.
It's a tough situation, but like.
Yeah. Do you feel like the tech world is sometimes like the favorite child?
Oh man, I can talk about this one for days, because I've been on both sides. So to me, it's a bit like the tech world. I feel like sometimes we're a bit insulated, and like I'll give an example of it. I feel like tech people make money typically, way outside the average.
Right.
Somewhere like Canada. Like I think the average was like 120, 130K.
Yeah.
But the average family income in BC, for example, is 78K. And in some instances, I think maybe a couple of years ago, it was like 60,000.
Family, bro.
So after tax, 60 is like 48K. Just imagine you were operating on that income. And I mean, for a lot of people, talk about buying a house. I mean, look, you like just to survive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's a family, so potentially have kids. And I feel like sometimes we don't necessarily understand that it's a blessing that is meant to be used to kind of create more avenues for other people to also, like, you're supposed to be the brightest of the bright, so bring efficiency in places that are not there, and stop like necessarily kind of I don't know, like tech gets a lot of coddling, right? Like because we're supposed to be the people that are bringing the innovation, but truly I heard this on a podcast, I mean a conversation where Mark Andreessen was speaking with Adam Newman on their new venture, right? And he was saying that it's like tech gets a bad rep because over the last 20 years they focused on like cute things, right? Like, drive a car here, do this here. But the core things that make up the economy are housing. I think it's housing, energy, and I forgot what the last one is. Healthcare, those three. They're like 80% of the economy. Tell me the innovations we've had in there that are breaking.
Right.
I mean, we're almost at Theranos, but...
I mean, but you see, even when we did Theranos, what was it? Smoke and mirrors, right? And it's like, so now that's why they're going into this cute venture of like, what's that thing called? I think it might flow. It might be a good, it might be a good outcome. But like, again, it's like, we don't focus on the places that actually impact people's lives and improve lives. It's like, we're just searching for, we use the fact that 95% of startups fail to
justify going into whatever.
And then friggin' monkeys that are on some NFTs and like we're funding that, but like people don't have access to clean water in some places.
The NFT
right?
time was the most confusing time in my life because during the pandemic, I have family in Nigeria who are literally in poverty. You know, these are not necessarily lazy people, and some of them are not even dumb people. They are super smart, but it's just the economy. But they don't have the opportunity. They can afford to have food on the table. And then I go on Twitter or Clubhouse, hang out with my tech friends, and they are talking about spending money on JPEGs. And I'm just like, oh my god.
Oh my gosh.
The disconnect. Right?
It's so disconnected.
I just dropped $50,000 on this JPEG.
I was
like, whoa.
I think that's the word you use there is the truth. Disconnect. Because it's like out of touch, just, you know, not that you can't use your money for whatever, you can. But like, that's what I think it is. It's like now you get to this point where there's a bit of entitlement. Oh, I make 200K, or I make, you know. And then we also think that the salaries map to like are some sort of indicator of how smart or how important your views are,
work is,
you know. And it's not necessarily true. It's just, you know, a bit of, I'll say, element of hard work, but also sometimes it's luck. If you didn't fall in, like say I went to message the CEO and he didn't respond.
Yeah.
That's it. You got me? So
confidence as well, you know. What you negotiate is what you get.
Exactly.
When I was going through my interview process, dude, I added 30K to my salary.
Wow.
I didn't change anything in my resume. My experience did not all of a sudden change. It was literally just from someone offering me something higher than I expected. And I just kept like negotiating, and and I could have easily said it at the first salary, and I would have been unlucky in quote.
Kinda, right? And then that's your starting point, right? But I think me personally, I've now started being a bit more. There's contentedness, like I'm being content. But I also understand that the mission for me I think for tech people should be enabling. Like you should always be using your skills to create something that also opens doors for other people. And
that is it, man.
Not like, you know, we're crying over. I remember I was arguing about taxes. I'm like, oh man, why are we paying so much in taxes?
Why so much taxes, man?
Even after that, the taxes are like, even post after tax income is still higher than you know,
most.
And so it just got to be a bit, you know, grateful and focus on. I have a startup that I'm working on.
Do you want to share that, or is it in stealth?
Oh, I don't believe in stealth.
Okay.
I believe like ideas.
As a true product manager,
I don't
have to test. So.
And I mean, I think there's so many barriers like execution, resources, like connections that will make or unmake. And if people actually do your thing, it's just validation of the idea and the market.
100%.
It doesn't stop. You can still do it.
I agree with the idea of like the barriers. Like nobody can just copy an idea. Like say you say your idea right now, somebody could listen to it and say, oh, that's a great idea, let me go pursue it. But they're not gonna have subject matter expertise, first of all. But then also the drive to push through those barriers. It's so hard to start a company.
The intangibles too.
The intangibles, those are so crazy. I think I've pivoted so many times, and so now when people tell me something like, oh, imagine Uber for puppies or something, I'm just like,
Once you start doing the work, you realize
you understand it's not just Uber for puppies, the kind of things it takes. So I mean, the idea is really, it started off with like my background's in finance, so obviously it's a fintech startup. But I think for me, I've always been thinking like real estate is a path to like wealth creation. And so was trying to find a way to connect people into like equity positions that wasn't requiring like a down payment. In my mind, the thesis was a down payment is more of a hindrance, like a barrier, than it is a measure of risk. Right? Because if say your risk, like today, you have 100 grand and say like you lose let me not use you. Somebody has 100 grand and they lose their job. Their risk at that, like the day before and the next day, hasn't necessarily changed because of the 100K additional. Their spending behaviors and those kind of things are what we should really kind of focus on. So anyway, so the whole idea was, okay, reroute the way it works. So say I have an old person who has 500K. At their age, let's say they're 60 plus. real estate's like a long-term game.
Yes.
So you've got a younger person that is maybe in their 30s.
Yep.
They have the time horizon to live out, earning their equity.
Gotcha.
This person with their 500K is looking for yield. They're looking for returns.
Quick
Quick
time
returns.
horizon.
I want to
return.
make income.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to pump all this 500K into something and then be getting like 1K back. Like, you know what I mean? So what it was like, break those up, create a fund, let these older people or wealthier people put money into the fund. And then we identify people that are currently not considered, like that don't have the down payment, but they have a really strong financial profile.
Yeah.
Or they have the down payment but don't want to put it down. And use that as like a way to kind of share equity. So once the person puts the down payment in, we go to the bank and say, okay, we're guaranteeing them because we know their financial profile. They're able to afford the mortgage payment. And so the bank will maybe give us the rest. Maybe it's like a smaller portion. And then you pay majority of the money to the individuals, to that fund, and then just a little bit to the bank. And you obviously get a really good rate.
Yep.
Because you're coming for a 20% mortgage.
Yeah.
So, I mean, worked that out, but I started realizing that mortgage rules are very, very, some economies are really built on housing. And so I was like, okay, that's not really going to work out. Tried running with it. It's called seed cap, zero down, like so many little ideas. Then pivoted a bit into like budgeting. And so just being in the world of AI, I was like, okay, well, most budgeting apps are around like what you've done. So they show you like historical.
Yep.
Right.
But they should be, I believe that it should be geared around what you should do.
Yeah.
Right.
There's not enough of that.
It's not where you know.
Do you use Mint?
I do. And
it's nice for like, you can track your net worth, you can track like how you've spent in the past, but there's no suggestion of how you can improve your spending habits in the past. And I think that's where maybe like your AI expertise can also come into play.
100%.
Is noticing trends and habits. Because like, for example, if you're maybe getting started in a hobby or you've just met a new group of friends, you might start to spend more on a particular category.
Exactly.
But in these apps, it's not telling you that. It's not
it doesn't give you the
like,
insights on you and how you're changing over time.
Yeah.
Right. So the whole thing was, the premise was, okay, this now it's called avocado.
Yeah.
And the avocado reason was because there was a billionaire that said millennials are unable to afford homes and like nice things basically because we spend all our money on avocado toast and gourmet coffee. I was like, okay, well, avocado, because I should be able to spend my money, but also afford like nice things because I'm aware of it. Yeah. So started going down that route. I even have the app on my phone.
Oh, nice.
We built it out. I had a team in Ghana. My co-founders out there. So I started doing it myself, and I went to Ghana and I met a bunch of people. One has already been to YC. He's built out a company. Like they're there.
YC is Y Combinator for people who don't know.
Y Combinator. So they're doing well. Like raised 17 mil. And then I spoke to him about the idea, and the whole thing was, well, let's build an app that takes in your bank, like, aggregates your financial information, and then it starts to recommend what you should do. And then you could even have like rings, like an Apple Watch. So one that says like, like this is how many challenges. And uses challenges to optimize that.
Gamify it a little bit.
Gamify it a bit, know, and then kind of also embed a bit of wellness. So like, how is your mental state around your money? So how do you feel about money?
People's relationship with money is a big thing,
it's
man.
so crazy. Right? Do you see it as like a tool? Like, what are you trying to? So, how are you feeling? And then measure that over time, and show you basically where you can go with us. And the challenges kind of slowly work on getting you towards believing that you can. Because right now, the truth is, a lot of people, if I say save 50K a year, what the apps will do is they'll break that 50K into equal chunks. So 50K divided by 12 every month, save this. It's very silly, right? Because there's an attainability signal concept when you're working on any goal, gym, money, all of that. So you need to see the thing and believe I can do it first. Then you need some sort of accountability in there. So like a person that's keeping you accountable. And so some system that abstracts it away from you. Right? So that's why piggy boxes and like money going, like, in Ghana, they call it susu, works. So we wanted to embed some of these concepts in. But I was gearing it more towards African diaspora and Africans because I was like, that segment has in my opinion, very, very not great relationship with money because traditionally they've not had a lot of it. Yeah. Whereas like most of these people that come from, and I think it's a broader problem, but I was just more like starting there as a niche and then kind of expanding. And then kind of realized, again, that's a secondary thing. So people who have started having like a bit of money, this becomes a core problem for them. Right. It's like, okay, how do I stay on top of my money? Yep. But that's not majority of people. No. You really check the stats.
In that market that you're trying to reach.
Check the stats. It's scary. Like, get this. 60% of North Americans do not have up to $1,000 in their bank accounts.
The bank, 60%. 60%. That's over half.
And then this is even scarier. 40% have less than zero. You get me?
Less than zero. We're in debt, which is something that I actually wanted to talk to you about the gamifying part as well. The gamifying part of the idea is a lot of people like forget the wealth building part. It's how do I get out of debt and thus build a relationship with money.
Is that where your pivot is now? Because I don't think you got to the...
Yeah, I didn't get to the pivot. Yeah, but pivot. What it was at the time was like when you enter the app, it just kind of categorizes you. So once you come in, we look at your financial situation and then aggregate it and say, okay, you're at a debt stage or you're at a growth stage or you're at a value stage. Yeah. So if you're at a debt stage, we're not focusing on any sort of, well, just come out of the debt.
Yeah.
Right.
If you're at the growth stage, okay, you have maybe 10K. How do we get you to your first 100?
Yeah.
Right? If you're at a 100 plus, okay, you're doing well. Yeah. For your thingy, let's kind of make sure you keep a lot of this whilst growing it steadily. Because at your point, you have magnitude on your side, right? And time. So let's keep as much as you can whilst growing it over time. And then in 20 years, your 100K could turn to 500, 600 because it's compounding. But at the growth stage, you'll probably need to invest in maybe some slightly risky assets. And then debt stage, don't even think about investing because your money is your debt is growing exponentially. Yeah. Right? So that was what we're doing then. Right now, we've kind of broken it up into two ideas now. So I realized that when I went back, I go back to Ghana quite often. And I spent a bit of time. Last year, I spent 4 months there. This year, I spent 3. Yeah. It's kind of weird to say last year, but the 2021 December into March was 2022. And then this year, November till end of January. Okay. And I started realizing that the problems I'm trying to solve here are niche, like they're fringe problems. You get me? It might work out and there's people who want it. But back home, there's much more of a need for primary services, like primary things. So sending, receiving money, the
essentials.
Basics. Yeah, sending, receiving, storing money. Right now, they're not there. Your money is losing value. So anyway, we decided to kind of pivot, and now the team is building, like we have two things. So one is a global market for Surf Club, which is the avocado side. And then the other one is called Surf Club. And it's weird because you'd be like, why would you call it a bank? It's a neobank. So we want to kind of start off with enabling sending, receiving, and storing money first. Okay. And doing
locally?
Locally and internationally. So like say I'm in Ghana and I want to pay for Spotify. Yep. How do I do it? I can do it with my debit card, but there's so many things I can't participate in the global economy. So how do I invest in global assets? In Ghana right now, there's nothing really to do. Nigeria has some, right? Nigeria has some cool fintechs that are doing.
And I was like, how does it differ from like Flutterwave?
Yeah, so Flutterwave, I don't know if Flutterwave is more of like a payments gateway, right? Okay. So we might use Flutterwave. So what we're trying to do is create a centralized bank that leverages some of these rails and functionality and just allows you to send mobile money locally to kind of like send, receive, and store money first. Okay. And the next thing is investing, lending, insurance, crypto. Now we're taking it another layer. So we're trying to allow participation of like domestic Africans in the global economy, and then also allow diasporic Africans to engage back home. So say I want to be able to buy real estate in Ghana, or I want to invest in a farm, or I want to own a house. Now there's different kind of funds that can work. So what are we going to do? Enable your ability to send money back. Again, existing apps are there, so we could use them to
move the money.
Yeah. And then over time, you kind of bridge this gap between these two groups that have a lot in common, that have a lot to offer each other. And eventually, say you have a bunch of money that you're like, okay, I have 10K. It can become peer-to-peer lending, that you're funding some enterprises in Nigeria. So right now, the broader vision is a neobank for the continent.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's called Surf Club. And then on the side, I have Avocado, which is like on this side of like helping the digital generation with their money management.
Yeah.
But to do both is kind of hard. I'm more inspired about the African side of things because our continent is growing, problems are magnifying, and the only people that will solve these things are people that have experienced it and can see the future. And I've seen it happen already in Latin America. There's a company called Nubank. You should look them up.
Nubank.
Okay. And the founder is just amazing. And from his perspective, I see us replicating the same thing or better.
But for African challenges.
Yeah, exactly.
That's when I'm evaluating ideas that I want to work on now. I've been using this Wikipedia mindset, like something that is not just a flash in the pan, something that becomes critical part of how the economy works. Like even like Twitter, it's kind of crappy right now.
Yeah.
But it still serves a purpose, which is it's like a town hall
for
where people, if you're really deep in Twitter, you know the value.
Yeah.
You understand the value. YouTube is part of the internet infrastructure right now.
Yeah.
So they're almost like monuments, you know what I mean? It's like you're building, I don't know,
infrastructure.
and real infrastructure on the internet.
Yeah.
And those are the ideas I start thinking of right now because no matter the waves and circles that goes, those companies tend to stay.
Because look at Twitter has not innovated. Like if you really look at it's not changed.
No,
the app is the same.
Yeah.
And me, when I look at my loyalty, Instagram and all of them, I had waves, but Twitter has just been like I go there and share.
Yeah.
So I think it's about time where like basically value is not being robbed of like young Africans. Like Ghana, for example, 50% inflation ate away 50% of our value.
Yeah,
wow.
In 2022. I went there and
just 1 year?
In 1 year,
Wow.
We get COVID 50%. Like it's nuts, and the exchange rates are so the real purpose is this. I find like young people are struggling to find purpose. And the reason why is like now everybody's focused on making money. So you see a lot of people doing extreme stuff on socials just to get likes or just to get, because they're optimizing for money. They're not able to optimize for purpose because you have a primary need first. Yeah. Right. And so
that short-term need.
So why don't we just build something that enables like a continent that is being eroded by inflation, exchange rates is going to, and help them start to also see a future there, because so everybody right now, if you ask them what's the African dream, at least in Ghana, is to leave. You get
in Nigeria,
me?
we call it Japa.
It's everybody wants to
run away.
If you give people the option, like, yo, I'm gonna give you a business in Ghana here today with, let's say 100K capital, or I'll pay for it to come here. I promise you, people will 80-90% will take that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Dude, when I went to Nigeria, the cop, they stopped us. I don't know why. They were trying to extort us.
Yeah,
they stopped us and they were like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And then my brother was like, "Oh, I have a business here." The guy was like giving them tough time. And then he asked me he was like, "Show your ID."
Yep.
Then I gave him my ID. Then he saw Canada. He's a cop.
Yep.
He's supposed to be like one of the,
guys
of the economy. He was like, "Oh my God, you're from Canada. Oh, that's my dream country."
Yeah.
And then he became like a super fan.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, no, I can't get anything from you. Like, just give me your number." I was like,
meanwhile, here's a guy, a business owner in your own country.
I was like, he's crazy. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
You even see how he to him, the value that he's had is that he has a connection in Canada.
Yeah.
As opposed to any money you give him.
Not a business person.
Don't give me.
I was like, okay, like this country is, we are in trouble.
Honestly. And honestly, the opportunities on the continent are nuts. Like when it takes you coming here a bit and then you go back and you're like, okay, I can just have something, like there's all low hanging fruit.
Oh yeah.
But also like the mentality, like the user, it's not easy to starts things off. But if you get started and you go, like, look at Flutterwave. I mean, they solved a solid niche, right? And Shipper Cash came. And my thing is, all those guys are solving the very, very basic, like
the beginning infrastructure, as you're saying.
You know, Cisco's and the IBMs of great. But now I want to add value on top of that, right? And enable it so that somebody can wake up and, as a business, I'm not trying to, like, my cost is not increasing dramatically. I can't plan around that. I can just have my money in either some US treasuries. Because guess what? Like, I can even just hold US treasuries on an app. And when I convert it back to cities at the time I need it, I've made money.
You would have won. Imagine you did that when the 50% inflation thing happened. You just held it through that wave.
Look,
you know?
Ghana's currency exchange rate used to be 1-to-1 with the US dollar in 2008. Right now it's 1-to-12. So just imagine if you were a millionaire back then in cities and in USD, it was 1-to-1. If you said, oh, let me convert my money to US dollars at the time, today you'll be 12 million. Like, just think about that. And then the flip is true too. So if you held your money in $1 million, see, right now you have less than 100K of USD.
So much value.
You know? So there's a big problem there, and inflation is literally affecting a lot, and we can't really dream. And most of these economies is because they've solved the scarcity, like the basics of it. So it allows people to start to do things, take risk, grow the economy, right? And I mean, even though sometimes my fear is that, like, you start to introduce debt into a situation, and I mean, I use that stat of 60,000 people have like $1,000. You know what the average net worth is at 30 in Canada?
Average net worth at 30?
Guess.
What's your guess?
20K.
20K?
Yeah.
30 years old. I'm gonna say 50K. I'm gonna be generous. I'm gonna be
You guys
generous.
are really doing well. Minus 27K.
Minus 27. Because of school, no?
Yeah, I mean, school is there, but also like
consumer debt.
Yeah, people are really. So, I mean, that's my question. I was asking this question. I was like, man, is it actually a good thing to introduce like this sort of system into? It's a very, very, like, are you going to be part of a broader systemic? And the issue becomes people need to solve stuff. So are you if you don't do it, someone will. So are you facilitating? It's ideological. I always struggle with it, but at some point maybe there's lessons we learned from the West and put some more guidelines around.
Yeah, we don't have to repeat the exact same mistake.
We can't because people are different.
Yeah.
The society is different. The technology we have right now is different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we can. The beauty we have the disadvantage. We're so far behind. But the advantage we have is we don't have to catch up.
But we can skip things like mobile peer-to-peer sending is a big thing back home. M-Pesa back home. Yeah. Huge. But like we skipped kind of like the landline phone and blah blah blah. Now it's like internet to your phone.
People pay for things with airtime? Yeah, I didn't realize that until I went home. I was like, what do you mean you send me airtime?
It's basically like having a debit card. You've got your bank account on your phone. You can just send and you can get one. And that's a skip because in some ways, back home we're more ahead in terms of like the peer-to-peer sending. Yeah. Like Interac, we take that for granted for like email transfers between us in Canada. But in the US, Cash App was like an innovation. It was like a big step. But back home, we already got it on the phone and we're using M-Pesa to send it. So
that's
like
true.
There's opportunities to skip steps. But I really like what you mentioned about debt as well, because I think part of the housing crisis that we have here is because we can borrow money to do something like buy a house. That means that like the cost of the house can keep going up and up and up because people can quote unquote afford it by borrowing the money to go do it. I don't think we should try and redo that.
I don't think we should, but I think there's a part of back home where we're losing out on stuff. So say everybody buys things cash. And it's not an efficient use of cash.
I used to think it was so smart.
No, it's terrible. Right? But like people have so much. I was telling my dad, like, imagine how much value is in this house that you cannot use for stuff. You basically cannot. You know why not? It's tied up. But if you had a way where you could take a home equity line of credit against the value of the house is appreciating anyway because population is growing, demand for this is growing. So say the house is worth 100K today, and you pull out 50K against this house.
Yeah.
In 10 years, the house is worth 150K.
Yeah.
If you sell the house,
Immediate
it
cash.
pays off the money you've pulled out, and you could have used that 50K to start another venture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what people do here. It's like nobody's even fully paying off their mortgage.
Yeah.
They pay it off. It gets to a point, and they pull out money against it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Moves the thing up a bit. And they are just forever in this cycle.
Yeah.
Why? So it's like you are unlocking the economy a bit. You know, but us, we're so level one. Like we are first order, right?
Yeah.
Like arbitrage, buy low, sell high. You can't do anything. There's no like second order derivative, like financial instruments,
leverage.
Like nobody's understanding what. And I think that's another thing we see on the deck. It's like we want to enable Africans to participate in the global economy, but we also want them to understand and appreciate and benefit from leverage and compounding.
Yeah.
Which it's not a concept. How many people do I know who actually have like investments?
Yeah.
Most people are buying government bonds, and
Yes.
guess what? In Ghana, they failed last year.
Yeah.
So what happens? So I think there's a big opportunity then. I feel like it takes people like us and also people on the ground listening to those people.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we go back and we have these big ideas and we don't listen to the person that the market woman was telling you.
Yeah.
Product market
You
fit,
know?
man. You need it.
You need
that
somebody
fit.
telling you like, okay, I would use this thing, but then they are also using it. You know, it's not the same. Users will give you so much feedback.
No, you want to.
Yeah.
They're challenged. If you're building something from the lens of someone in North America, you will fail so much. That's why I like that you are going home.
Spending
You need
time
to
at home.
because there's so much different challenges. Like I don't know about Ghana, but you have better electricity in Ghana. Nigeria, electricity is a challenge.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to
Same-
make something
same
that is
Tanzania.
fully
Electronic.
electricity
That's
is
the
a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People are using phones that are like 10 years old.
Yeah.
So you can't have
USSD
this-
has to be in your strategy.
Yeah,
I mean,
you can't have all that. Things can be
App
like.
can be huge and it's
No, it
taking
can't
up all
take
the
so
space.
much stuff.
Bandwidth, I know, right?
Yeah.
You want one download, then they have to get more
a bigger
airtime.
bundle.
Top up, you know?
Yeah.
No, man.
Doesn't make
It's-
sense.
It's wild, but
Yeah.
I think that all I'll say at the end is like there's opportunity home, and I personally think when we come here, sometimes we get a bit comfortable and we get into this like I could just live here, grow, like live my life.
Yeah.
But I always say when I look at most other like immigrant groups, their home is also still developing. So if
Yeah.
you look at like Asians or like Southeast Asians, right, or Europeans, like there's still things going on there.
Yep.
But us, like people come and it's very individual, and I want it to be like where there's a wave of us that like focus on home in some segment. You don't need to do everything.
Yep.
You pick your vertical and you help improve.
You're
that
speaking
and-
our language right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, man.
Because I enjoyed when you mentioned that you're mission driven. What we're doing right now, this is mission. Like I mentioned, my mission is to improve inclusion. It's because the reason for that is I want to be back home in the midst of the startup economy and be solving things, but I can't. I know that that's not my highest leverage right now. My highest leverage is to be here,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I have to find a way to
What can I do to
make that
impact?
what can I do?
connection.
Like
Yeah.
empower people who can be closer to home,
Yeah.
or even someone who's home listening.
Exactly.
They can get some of these foreign gems.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, foreign gem.
They can get some of these foreign gems from us.
Oh man.
so you know what I mean. So it's like they're hanging out with us, right?
Yeah.
They might be back home, but they get to
You open those lines of
Yeah.
communication
Yeah.
a little bit,
Yeah,
share
we
some
connect the
ideas.
bridges.
Yeah.
even down to the branding. Like we're using black and yellow
Oh,
today,
okay.
and if you go to Lagos, first you get out of the airport, what do you see everywhere?
There's black
Black and yellow buses, taxis,
Oh, okay.
autos. Everything is black and
Everything.
yellow. That's the symbol.
Oh, okay.
That's the symbol of Lagos, and that's right in the middle of the Tanzanian flag
That's
as
the
well.
Oh,
flag.
okay.
Yeah,
Look at
so
that.
and black.
it's a way to just keep us rooted. Like that's what we do it for. No matter how this evolves,
Yeah.
the
It's
mission
okay.
remains the same. It is to connect us back
Yeah.
to our roots.
Yeah, no, it's necessary. You need those symbols too. Like we have a lot in our culture too that we can offer to the world.
Yep.
You know, and I think people are starting to see it with TikTok and all of that. But
Yep.
I think we're responsible for that. And I mean, I don't like to put anybody else's mission, but me personally, I keep saying like my dad was kind of a little wrong with that whole like president thing.
Yeah.
Mine is impact. Like I know that I won't be satisfied just having this tech role and slowly like kind of working my way, director, whatever.
Yeah.
I have to actually change, and I like my life vision, my life mission is fully help 100 people move from extreme poverty into at least upper middle income status.
That's
And
so
hope that 10 of them
that's so specific.
will repeat the same cycle. If
like
I
it.
achieve that,
Wow.
I've done what I need to do.
Yep.
And like, I mean, the goal is to do more, but minimum, the lower bound of that is
what you're trying to
100. And then hopefully 10 of them will do it. And then that will lead to a ripple effect. Because if 10 do it for one person, that's 100, right? Do you get me? Or no,
Hundredfold.
10, I don't know if 10 do it for 10 people.
Yeah.
Like, it needs to get
Exponent is hard for
exponential.
humans.
Yeah.
Exponent is hard for humans to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah, the exponent is now, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like an extra 100 people, even with a 10% success rate,
Exactly.
which is really
right?
interesting. Yeah. I like how like all I was about to say this as well, but I like how specific the mission is, because it doesn't matter the how now.
Yeah.
You can try a lot of different things. It could be through the app that you enable people. It could be through doing lectures back home that you enable people. The how doesn't really matter, but you have the mission of like, this is the impact that I want to have, and it's very measurable.
Yeah.
And I really like that. That's a really cool.
In
that's a
our
cool
intro episode, I mentioned that to Mark. Like values, principles, missions, they are very important to have, and I think a lot of people will benefit from that. For me, like I said, I think I told Mark, everything I did was not working when I didn't have those things in place.
Yeah.
I was just creating stupid ideas that made no sense.
They
In theory, they were great.
Yeah,
but some of them were harder than some of the things I do today.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? I would create an app for like 6 months. It
Yeah.
was, in theory, it was
Sounds
genius.
good. Yeah,
But it wasn't solving anyone's problem.
Problems.
It was not based on reality. It wasn't based on real mission, real problems they're solving.
Yeah.
And so anytime I meet people who are mission driven, it amazes me.
So, question for you about the mission and about what you've been doing so far. Where do you see AI enabling your mission in a way forward? Because I feel like there's maybe an opportunity there from a leverage perspective. But I want to hear from you a little bit.
Yeah, so when I was talking about the first parts of the idea, which is like around like budgets and tailoring them, that was what it was. It was going to be AI based, using the power of AI to do this. But I think, like I said, it's more primarily, there's more impact you can have there. So the hope is like in the first bit is to basically connect everything, right? To just bring in all those existing solutions into like a place that people can do their mobile money. They can kind of send international. They can have like a Visa card that allows them to interact with the world. Yep. And then for the layer 2 things, now it's kind of highly personalized. So, now I can receive money, and I can store money on this app. Yep. Great. Now what's next?
Yeah.
So if I say what my goals are clearly, right? And if I say what my if the algorithm can start to see certain things that are going on with me and give me analytics and kind of start to suggest, if you did this, like you can start to do some scenario analysis and simulation. So there's a part here where we want to kind of embed AI into core functions. We don't want to overdo it though, because I find like sometimes to start off, I think right now it's a buzzword, right? Like so many people are just around it, and I think people are even confusing like natural language processing with AI. Like everybody thinks a chatbot is
throw AI
in
somewhere.
in there, and the question is even what is AI? Because if say I ask ChatGPT to write a book or something for me, right? Does that output of the thing, like, because now say it writes it for me and I write an article. Yep. Can I say, I wrote like the article has AI in it because I see what you're saying. Is the artifact
is it
itself
powered by AI as a result? Is this an AI thing? The fact that I wrote an article, because I could have a blog about whatever and use AI to help write it. That doesn't make me an AI company.
Exactly. You're just using, so it's the tool. So I think there will be certain core things that we want to embed, like basically the recommendation part of things. Thank you. And I think ultimately you get to a point of these things will help with the personalization. These things will help with focusing on what are you really trying to solve. You personally, what do you want? And then like from there, once we've already captured the basics, it starts to become like, okay, let's take it to the layer 2. And that's what people said on my app when I went home. A lot of people said this app is great. Like I'll show you after the episode, but they're like, wow, you build this app, and all my developers are home.
Yeah.
Like
wow.
everybody, my whole team is essentially there. And then it's also some people here of like, got some people from Visa, Monzo, EcoBank back home. And it's like most of the people are tied back home, but all my development team is there.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, you guys could create this.
Yeah.
But the feedback I got, unfortunately, was it's too advanced for today. Like people don't need this today, right? And eventually, so I can still have it on there as like use it for free.
Right.
Do you get me? Use it for like discovery and like allowing people to like acquiring customers as a free perk.
Yep.
And then eventually, when the economy gets to the point of embracing that kind of personalization where we have a bit more mature financial markets, then it's like, okay, cool, poof, wealth management on like steroids, and it's doing it for you, like automated.
Yep.
Right. So just want to kind of focus on the core things, allowing reliable sending, receiving money, and then eventually we'll go into the layer 2 side of it and really start to add value there. And then, we'll see what the market asks for, right? Because it's feedback loops.
What do you have as an ask for the audience? Say, since people are interested, in the app, they want to hear more about it. Do you want them to just like follow your journey so far right now? Do you looking for people to test out the app? What are you thinking?
Yeah, so I mean, we've pivoted a bit, and so because of that, like the app, we pulled it from the App Store actually. So it's all only a test flight. But I could say you can go to surfclub.ai and sign up onto our landing page. Once we're actually ready to launch, the first, I think, 100, 200 people on there. So right now, I think we might increase the thing. But if we'll open it up to a like cohorts of beta testers, right? And if you're on there, you might get like the first year free. We plan on trying to make the app itself free, and then the monetization will be through other means. But like transaction fees and whatnot. But more so, we want to enable that first. See how people are really working with it, and then from there, pricing will come later. But that's surfclub.ai.
Okay. I love it, man. Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for being so open about it as well, and taking us through the journey of like, how you pivoted in and out of the various ideas that you had so far in the journey to Surf Club. I think it's important for people to understand, you don't just have an idea and then it becomes reality the next day. Like there's refinements. And even now you're like close to, what you're going to build, but then you realize, okay, maybe the app is doing a little bit too much at the moment.
Yeah.
Going for that actual product market fit.
And then and it's great to have met both of you, because you're also like potential users of the app, right? Like you're literally target market, and it'll be great to kind of get that feedback. You're also in tech, so you can kind of give honest. And I think that's another thing. Again, audience, be open to honest feedback.
Don't take anything personal.
Don't take it so personal.
Feedback is always a gift. I learned that when I worked at Aorca. We used to, in our feedback channel, we had a gift emoji. We just had that, and that was just stuck in my head. I started saying feedback as a gift. No matter how bad the feedback is, this app sucks. Cool. Why does it suck? What don't you like about it?
Why do you feel that way? Why do you feel so aggressively about it?
They said, a user who complains is a user who wants to stay.
He cares.
A user who doesn't complain those are the ones that you should be afraid of. They just slowly stop using your app and they're gone. And then the ones who complain, they want to stay. But they want you to know.
Give me a reason to stay.
Yeah,
that's a really good point.
That's true.
And I mean, the thing I always worry about now is it's so easy to come up with a MVP. So I always say, if you also have an idea, really put it out into the world, because you'll be shocked. Maybe where you start from is not where you end. And again, now it's really easy to launch those things. So I'll say, if you have an idea and you have a mission behind it, and like you think, okay, like I need so much. It's not really going to be with ChatGPT 2 now. You don't even really need like heavy developers to get like a light version going. I still think, obviously you want to get a team together, but put out stuff into the world, try, especially when you're young, because once you start getting into like the later years and family and kids, like it's not easy to
more risk.
It's a harder risk.
yeah.
It's a harder risk to
100%.
take. Yeah.
Yeah, so do things that make you scared. Doesn't work. There's a lot more like time for you to, at least that's the one thing I said. If I try all these things and it doesn't work, at least I tried it, and then like I can come back, and you'll be shocked. Most of the ex-founders I know, they even go straight into director roles because you had to think about so many things.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like nobody else would have. That
skill
experience
set.
is singular, right?
Yeah. That experience goes up really, really fast when you got to build your own company. Start thinking about all sorts of things.
I'm telling you right now, something that keeps me up all night. Like you be there thinking about like right now I have to file taxes. We're incorporated in the States.
Yeah.
I have to file taxes in the States. Okay, well, what company does this? Like how much is it gonna cost?
Yeah.
And you're thinking about like just the product, but there's marketing, there's sales, there's like legal fees, like privacy, like there's so many dimensions that you need to really think about.
Yeah.
And like questions that you've built this whole product finish, and now you can't say, oh sorry, you can't actually launch this because it's not, it doesn't follow, like legally it's not allowed.
Yeah.
Or like somebody has a patent, like little things, right? Like, and I'm just saying, you just need, there's a lot to build, but it shouldn't stop you from trying, right? And then at least you get the answers and you start to map out a path to actually doing the thing.
That's why it's important to have that mission. If you have that mission, you will find ways to scale any obstacle.
Yeah.
You would find
Exactly
ways
right, man.
around it. But if you're idea driven, once the idea fails,
You're done.
you've lost your motivation.
Idea driven is even okay. Money driven is the worst.
Oh,
Because
Oh yeah, you can be. That's true. You can have a vision that you want to bring to the world as well.
Yeah.
So it's not always the mission. Sometimes you can have a vision as well. So, but you need something beyond. Yeah.
Like I want to become a billionaire, and this is the easiest path. Yeah, look, like my research director said one thing to me the other day. He's like, most researchers get paid really well, right? I know this guy that he spent like 10 years building this app, whatever, and it took him 10 years, and he got acquired by I think one of the big tech companies. And he was like, when he finished, because of dilution and all of that, he roughly made on the payout. He roughly made probably like, I don't know if it was like under $1 million or something like that. He's like, in my time, like if you look at the kind of trajectory a typical director or researcher would go through, they would make that money just being an employee.
Yeah.
With less risk and less headache.
With less stress.
So it's like, the question is, what are you doing for? Are you risk averse? Are you not risk averse? Are you like, you know what I mean? And it was something that really, so he's like, if you have a reason to do it, then it has to be beyond you. But if not, like a lot of people always bash 9 to 5, and I'm like, man,
it can be pretty
nothing
good.
wrong with it.
It can be really good. You know, like everybody's just out here. Go, you need to be an entrepreneur for yourself.
No.
Our life is not easy.
You're doing what I'm doing too. The barbell, I call it barbell principle. If you've ever read this book, Anti-Fragile.
I've heard of it, but
Anti-Fragile. Anyways, the book, that's one of the concepts. Like always protect yourself against a risk that would shatter you. That's the whole concept.
Would
Like,
completely
so
ruin you.
So if you keep your 9 to 5 and you're trying different business ideas, if they fail, you are anti-fragile. You're not in debt. You're not, you know what I mean? You're still moving forward. You're failing forward. But if you prescribe to the advice that if you're not,
quit everything.
you have to quit everything. I did that before, and I would never do it again.
Honestly, like I also started taking advice from people that have done it. But also listening to, like, you listen to general advice, but be very, very handpicky of your opinions, because as people are just mirroring or reflecting their own insecurities on us daily, right? Somebody, why would you do this? Like Nubank founder, for example, he always talks about how, like, when he started doing it, they were telling him, all the banks in what do you call it, Argentina, like, so Nubank is across all of Latin America, by the way. And it's like the most successful fintech in the world. And I mean, maybe second to Stripe, but in Latin America at least, most successful neobank for sure. And he says when he was asking, all it was people conforming and fear. Like they would be like, these families will come after you, but he just started hearing, and he was like, those are not like reasons. Like, you're not giving me any like material. It's just like, okay, well, they're incumbents. Okay, they need to be disrupted, and they'll come from my family. I don't really live in Brazil. I don't live in Argentina. I'm in and out of the States, so my family is pretty fine where they are in Colombia, which was where I think he's from. So it was just like, okay, well, I'm still gonna do it, right? And he did it. And look at him now, right? So you got to really look at, okay, what is the risk? What's the reward? And then you ask yourself those real questions, and you try and get mentors that actually like have that vision. And like people will give you their opinions, and sometimes you want to take which one, but take it with a grain of salt. I think that's my
so many good nuggets in this episode. You guys are very, very lucky. For our first get, you have set the bar incredibly high. I don't know how we're gonna get other guests to even compete at the level.
There'll be a lot of people.
I think you dropped some incredible gems. I'm gonna go, I'm looking forward to editing this episode, so I can listen back again and just really take everything in. I just want to say I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I really enjoyed myself.
Thanks for having me. I think we need more of these conversations. At one point when we were doing our podcast, we actually started doing something called the Level Up series. And we started inviting people to come and talk. And I think those were the things that we need to hear. But those ones were kind of struggling because people wanted to hear about, relationships. And it's like...
some people just want to be entertained, right? It's interesting. The balance that you need to strike.
But I find like these episodes, and I'll say shout outs to both of you, because it's hard to start something like this. I find like there's a lot of noise in the podcast space. And it's always good to get like a refreshing one that you can put up and listen and be like, okay, this is something I can apply to myself. I could pull out 3 things out of that inspire me. And then, this is good to do. So keep at it, and then launch it soon so we can all be inspired and learn a lot from your journeys and your ideas as well. So
appreciate that.
It's that in Twitter they talk about build in public. So this is our way to learn in public. We share our journey and we figure it out.
It's amazing.
Just as a reiteration, where can people follow your journey? Drop your plug it, bro.
Okay. So on my I think Twitter, you can get me at Nene Azu or Nene Mazu, right? It's all one word. Right, on for my Twitter. LinkedIn, I'm very selective nowadays, but if you speak to me, well, I mean, we'll see. So LinkedIn is Nene Azu. That's my LinkedIn. Look for the Borealis AI person, or Surf Club is in my bio as well. Those are the main 2. And then I think if you want to follow the Surf Club journey, riding the wave to financial freedom.
I like that.
Definitely sign up on our waiting list, and that is surfclub.ai. So looking forward to hearing feedback as well, like on the page. Our Surf Club, I think our Surf Club Twitter is also Surf Club Finance, at Surf Club's Finance. So you can follow that. It's been like a bit iffy, post a couple of days, and then don't post for like 2 weeks, but it's tough to do.
Startup things.
If you decide to go down the content route, there is a blue ocean for the market that you're trying to address for SEO. I haven't done any keyword research or anything, but just knowing what content exists, you have a lot of opportunities to dominate that space. Because our people, and by our people I don't mean just blacks, people that are not from the Western society, there's a lot we have to learn about money.
All of you foreign gems out there.
All the foreign gems.
I'm telling you, that's amazing. And I mean, this is where like your expertise too. I'll be leaning on both of you. I think that's one thing our community doesn't do. Like we don't actually come together and leverage each other's expertise to kind of apply to solving problems. Like we do it like everybody wants to do things by themselves. And
there's enough for everyone to win.
There is.
Abundant mindset.
Is huge, right? The cake is huge. You just gotta, but someone said if you want to do things fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So
we'll definitely have you again. For another AI stuff. I was telling Mac yesterday. that I have a feeling that AI will be a recurring topic because
Yeah.
we just
a big thing right
opened.
now.
It's like we went into this door. We just can't go back anymore.
Oh,
Yeah.
And I think the day that
Fantastic.
happened was November 30th, 2022, the day ChatGPT launched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before that, there were things, but that was when we got into this new world
Snap.
that we're
Yeah.
not
Here
going
to
back
stay.
anymore.
Here to
Yeah.
stay.
So there will be a lot of discussions around that for sure. So hopefully we can come back and we'll talk about that.
No, for sure. And even outside of the podcast, we'll definitely be catching up because
Oh yeah,
I think sometimes too, you got to keep this energy around you just
Yeah.
to kind of keep going.
yeah.
Vancouver is already gloomy as is. Right? Yeah.
Exactly right, man.
Yeah, let's paint it yellow.
Let's do it.
Because yellow is in Ghanaian flag too.
Yeah, it
Just
is, it
FYI.
It is.
Even a black star is in the
Yeah, there's
middle.
a black
you know.
star.
Oh yeah, you got black stars too.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Green on either side, right?
I think it's red, gold, green, and then a
Red,
black
gold,
star in the middle.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Yeah, once again, thank you very much, Nene, man.
Yeah.
And we'll bring you back for another episode for sure.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
And that was Foreign Gems.
All right, see you next time. We don't have any outro catchphrase yet.
Yeah,
Build in public.